Hi, welcome to JadeCon Gaming. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to be flipping through and reviewing Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Fantastic. The first real published product. We've had some like digital things they put out, but published product that takes Dungeons & Dragons into one of the worlds of Magic the Gathering. I loved it. I've been on and off playing Magic, technically slightly longer than Dungeons & Dragons, though that's still, either one puts me back 15, 20 years, I don't know, into middle school. So, I've never delved too deep into their worlds or settings, I guess until I read through this. But, you know, the game is fun, the basic ideas are fun, and I've been aware that there has been, like, depth to the story beyond what I've, you know, gotten into, you know. At most, I might read some of the flavor texts on some of their cards. This delves into the world and really paints it as a Dungeons & Dragons setting. The colors of mana aren't even mentioned, etc. It's not trying to put it as, you know, here's how to make Magic into D&D. It's... we took the setting that Magic was, and we gave a D&D product for it. So if you take a look here, beautiful cover. And before I open it up, I want to mention just something that was noticeable is the back of all of the books have sort of this, like, the books have like a glossy finish, and then there's like a matte on the part here. And while it is the same on this book, the texture on the matte, like you can even see in how the light hits it, it's just rough. The matte section is rougher than the matte section on previous books. So, I don't know if I like it or dislike it or even care, but it was definitely something like, as I held the book in my hand and my hand was against that, I noticed. Definitely noticed it. Anyways, the book opens up here with a letter to Jace. Being somewhat familiar with Magic, I'm familiar with Jace as a planeswalker. Apparently, at the point in time where this is set in Ravnica, he is the living Guild Pact. Guild Pact used to be some sort of magical agreement between all of these guilds, these different factions that this game focuses on. But apparently it got personified in him. He, being a planeswalker, jumps between different worlds, so he's not around, and that's sort of like, almost like the letter is setting this book up as, here is a series of information that you need to know to be prepared to, you know, to do what you need to do as the living Guild Pact. And sort of, you know, welcoming us to Ravnica. Brief overview of each of the guilds. I'll go over that as I actually go through them. And a little random, if you just need to randomly roll for one of the guilds, a little chart to list them in order. They have Ravnica's calendar, and they have it basically adjusted, you know, 12 months, and each one has a real-world month associated with it to make it easy to actually use. The book itself utilizes normal coinage that you are used to, but technically they have here... what is it? The listings for coins in Zibs and Xenos, which are the names of the currency actually in Ravnica. And because it's a little more civilized of a world than typical D&D, there are a few new items, cup of coffee, newspaper, etc. Just a few extra things here, and then they give the languages that this world uses. Then we get to Chapter 1, which is character creation. They have a basic thing about choosing your guild, which there are multiple different sections in the book that go over how to choose a guild, and they go over the different races in the world. The first one being human. You can play as a human. Humans have family names. Pretty much other races do not. You can play as an elf or half-elf. And they sort of go into the differences of the different types of elves. But statistically, they're the same as the player's handbook. And then we get into all of the other races in this setting, which all of the remaining races are new to this book. So we get Centaur, and these are like tiny little centaurs. They're, you know, a medium-sized creature, but and they are Fey. So the first time you're playing as something other than a humanoid, which I guess to call a centaur humanoid would be silly, but they're faster. They of course have the equine build, being horse. They have hooves they can attack with, etc. So you can be a centaur. Goblin is in fact the same as goblins in revolves, except a few extra details that directly tie them to the setting. Loxodon are elephant people, and it's awesome. They're definitely one that I'm like, ooh, I might take that into a world of my, a setting of my own. But in addition to like natural armor from thick skin and powerful build, they also have a trunk, which can be used. Basically, they give it into the rules of you can't like wield an extra weapon or something, but you can manipulate things. You can, it can be a snorkel. It's like it is, very cool. Trunk, Minotaur, which are while smaller than the Minotaurs from like the monster manual, a medium-sized Minotaur is cool by me. But yeah, they have, of course, the ability, the horns and being able to rush people and etc. So yeah, they have basically natural attacks with that. Then we get to Civic Hybrids, which are particularly one of the which are the last two. Basically, I'm not sure how it would fit into a different setting. Like these last two, well, obviously great for this. Civic Hybrids are creatures that have been experimented on, and they have like unnatural things like you choose at different points. But these are like people that have modified themselves or been modified to combine animal traits to basically make super soldiers. So you can be that, or the Vidalcan, which of all things, Vidalcan Dispassion is you have advantage on all intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. So that's great. But they're the blue people. Anyways, they're intelligent. An intelligent race from the world. But yeah, so you have that, and then we go classes by guild, which breaks down each class and says, okay, if you want to be this class, depending on what subclass you choose, here are guilds that you would be likely to be part of. And they do note if certain things are from like Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Those subclasses are still in the list to be noted as far as where you might play. And of course, there are two subclass options that are new: the Order Domain, which is like for a lawful focused cleric, and the Circle of Spores, which is a fungus-based cleric that gives a new option for how to use your wild shape. So if you want to play, a druid that doesn't really use wild shape, but not have that power just go to waste, this gives you a cool option for how to use that resource. And then we get to Chapter 2. Woo, there's a lot of information in Chapter 2. It does start note here just with being guildless, because you don't have to be as a part of a guild, but a guild will function as your background, and that is amongst the information that is in this chapter. This chapter also goes into Renown, which is each guild is an organization which you could gain, ranks or whatever it may be. And there's rules on changing guilds and such. But I will start. I will actually go over the Zarya Senate, which are like the police officers. And I will kind of go through some detail, and basically all of the information in this, they have that kind of information for each and every guild. But the rest of them, I'm just going to kind of briefly go over like what the guild kind of is. But Zarya Senate, which is our police, they have a little flavor bit, and they talk about here is what the Senate is. Whether it's talking about the people that are leading Guildmaster and people of note, people of authority within the guild, the goals that the guild has, what it's trying to do, its establishing of law and order, etc. then it gives a little note for playing a character. So for Azorius, you're usually lawful, often lawful neutral, and most races are going to be, most people within are either human or Vidalcan, generally bard, clerics, fighters, paladins, or wizard, and then just a few details of you'd like to play this if you like these things. And then we go into joining the Senate, which, obviously there are different parts, different aspects of the different guilds, but like the Senate, you're more likely to be part of law enforcement, in which case it goes over the different types, arresters, law mages, precognitive mages, the different types of people in law enforcement, but it also goes over, well, there's an option for a role within the actual bureaucracy that maybe could still be a player character. But basically it's focusing on, you're going to play a character within this organization now. Obviously some of them have roles within the organization that isn't going to be fun for a player to be. It's like much of the bureaucracy is going to be boring because you're just going to be in an office all day doing menial tasks. But it's like, here's a section of that, a skilled orator or diplomat, like a bard or something, could put their skills to use, in this position, and still be, still have a fun character to be involved in adventures and such. And then we get to the actual background, which, starting off like a normal background, gives you, this gives you a couple skill proficiencies. This one gives 2 languages. Of course, languages are tool proficiencies, and then some equipment. You always get a insignia for your guild. And then this one, gives you a scroll containing the text of a law that is important to you, a bottle of blue ink, a pen, a set of fine clothes, and a belt pouch with 10 gold points, which it notes are Azorius minted 1 Xeno coins. And then it gives you a feature where you have legal authority as part of this guild. So it gives you that. And that's all normal background stuff. But each guild also gives guild spells. And so, spell levels up to 5th level, and in order to really benefit from this, you must either have the spellcasting or Pact Magic class feature. And for you, spells on the Azorius Guild Spells table are added to the spell list of your spellcasting class. If you're a multi-classed, it is added to all of your classes lists. None of the guilds give healing, so this does not function as a way to give healing magic to a wizard. That was my first thought. But there are some cool options, and basically adding extra spells to lists where they might not currently be. So some of these you may get added to your list. And that is cool as far as an extra power, which means basically, technically, as backgrounds, these are more powerful than normal backgrounds, if you are a spellcaster. But then they get into the amazing part. They give a detail of the visual effect of your magic. In the Zarya Senate, your magic often takes the form of blue or golden runes floating and glowing in the air in circular patterns, or of shimmering azure barriers of magical energy. Blah. Words, right? If you cast Ensnaring Strike, for example, the vines created by the spell might appear as rune-inscribed glowing bands that wrap around the target and hold it in place. So basically, you are reskinning the magic, which I thought was brilliant. Of course, you get the art of here. Then you get suggested characteristics. So, like any background, you have personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws relevant to people that are part of the guild. You also get contacts. And each one tells you how to do it, but most of them are, you get a ally and a rival from your guild, and then either an ally or rival from outside of your guild, and each guild has a list for within the guild, and a list that is, basically has an option either of get another one from within your guild, or 9 options of, basically, each of the other guilds, and how you might have a connection with one of those. You get how do I fit in, which is the idea of, how is your character, both, as a hero in a role-playing game, how do they fit into the guild? And then a little section within that is always, what if you have an entire party that's all in the same guild? and what you can do for that, including like an idea for a good class breakdown. I do want to point out this piece of art here, which shows off the example of that floating runework magic spell. Very cool. Then we get to rank and renown, which sort of goes into, depending on how much renown you have and what other prerequisites you meet, you can, over time, increase in the ranks, and depending on what, you doing so, you might get access to some additional benefits from the guild. Whether they give you certain items, or you have the ability to call on assistance from lower members within the guild, and that kind of thing. We then get sort of an enemies and allies, which basically goes on to, here are likely to be your enemies from, if you're in this guild, or allies if you're in this guild from outside, and then basically the guild's view on each of the other guilds. And then we go to the next guild. Boros Legion is the, and like I said, each one of these has the same kind of stuff for their own guild. Boros Legion is soldiers, warriors, like military. So, your militant force. House Dimmer are spies. They're the messengers and reporters, but really they're a group of spies that use that as a front. The Golgari Swarm are I believe, yeah, they're the ones that they dwell in the sewers and have ties with insects and undeath, and some of the monstrous kind of races are amongst their numbers. The Gruul clans are a series of different, like, savage clans, I think, barbarians and such, of different types that are loosely united and not really all that welcomed within society. We get the Izzet League, which are mad scientist inventors of like weird machinery kind of things. They supply the Mizium, which is like a magical energy power to the city. The Orzhov Syndicate, which I think is the first time I've ever pronounced that out loud, which, like money, they are the church, bank, and crime syndicate. You can, pay protection money to them kind of thing. The cult of Rakdos is a demon-worshipping cult that is also like the circus and entertainers. Therefore, demon-worshipping cult, technically respected members of society. We get the Silencia Conclave, which are sort of Druid, nature, like, preserving nature within, the world-covering city, basically. It is, promoting nature and keeping natural environments there and supporting that. And the Civic Combine are the mad scientists that do, like, human, like, body modification kind of stuff, and create new species, creatures, and such. So, yeah. We have each of the guilds have all the information that Azorius Senate had in it. Then, we get to Chapter 3, which is the 10th District, which is this section, basically 6 precincts that make up the 10th District. Each precinct is basically supposed to be like the size of a somewhat small city. So together they make an immense city, and there is more city on all sides of it. But the idea being of here is a section of the world that is detailed out, so if you want to run here, you can. If you want to run in other parts of the city, you can, and make it all up on your own. But they give sort of an idea. Like there's undersea, which is like basically underneath the city, there is like an ocean. There is like undercity stuff, which is where, both, underground, there are sewers and pipes and transit tunnels and crypts. But then also there's like Undercity, which is kind of Underdark-ish kind of area. So you have all of that underground under the city, and then it goes into each of the precincts. Precinct 1 basically being, here be rich people, and each one gives a closer up section of that map before, which I think is a very pretty map. I love it. And they just have like a couple pages on each that go over some of the major neighborhoods and such, and what guilds are, affiliated with each one. Precinct 3 has some natural areas. Precinct 4 has a rubble belt, which is basically a part of the city that is just torn down to rubble. That's where those barbaric clans are. Precinct 5 has the Civic Combines, or whatever, their main area. So yeah, they go just a couple pages on each of the precincts, and then Chapter 4 is creating adventures, which, and they give this beautiful piece of art. But yeah, so for creating adventures, they give for, each guild, they give some basic overall information first. Different types of adventures, what guilds are likely to be involved in different types of adventures, how to involve the characters and what complications may arise. And then they go into each guild, and they give you a location and the kinds of adventures that might happen on either side, whether the guild is like what the players are working with or against, some adventures that might be related to that location, because each guild gets a map of a location. So you get like a arrestor station for the Zarya Senate. So your cops have basically a arrestor station, which is, both a barracks, a prison, and a courtroom, all combined into one sort of building, and they give you details about that kind of location. Then they give you, just as far as making an adventure, villains, Azorius villains that would appear, and then using the Azorius as the villains for your campaign overall. Some goals that characters that work for the Zarya Senate might have, and then other adventure hooks that are, something like just a precognitive mage has foreseen the character's future struggles and tries to protect them, thereby interfering in their next adventure. Just sort of a little adventure hook that ties the guild in. And then we get, each other guild also has similar things. The Boros Legion has a garrison, so, big station for, soldiers to be. House Skimmer has, I believe it's a safe house. The Gogori Swarm has, like, a mansion in the underground area, like, basically, like, in the Undercity. Like an old, abandoned, fancy, like, aristocratic mansion from the old times back when the city had nobles and such. That's like now like underground and such, but they have a mansion that might be relevant. The Gruul clans has like an encampment. The Is It League gives an experimental workshop, which has the big generator that it's all like, this magical power generator could explode. The Orzhov Syndicate gives a church. The Cult of Ragnos gives like a, what do they call it? A notorious nightclub, basically, where they have like cages where dancers would perform or fight, because both are part of their shows. They're the kind of, being a demon worshipping cult. Like, for example, here we have some performers about to be impaled by spikes. Yay! Then we get Vernadi Center for the Celestina. Was it Conclave? Yes, Conclave. I've memorized it. Which is basically like based on a giant tree. There's sort of a different, a temple and some rooms and sort of a meeting garden and such. So sort of one of their natural locations there. And we get growth chambers for the Civic Combine, which is where they do some of their experiments with creating new types of creatures. And then also, of course, each one also gives all the same sort of things of villains, adventure hooks, etc. Then we get a few pages, of Krenko's Way, which I actually didn't read much through because I don't intend to run it, at least not at this point. And it is a first level adventure. There is a first level adventure included in here. Has a couple relevant creatures, including, of course, Krenko. But it's just, on pages 160 to 171, so basically about 10 pages put aside to give a first level adventure in order to connect characters of any guild and get the game started. So, okay, fair enough. A very small adventure tied within the book. Then we get to Chapter 5, Treasures. And they kind of give a breakdown of coins as treasure because different coins are more common within the world. We get guild charms, which is one of the things that, depending on your rank in the guild, you might be able to get a charm that basically lets you do a small magical effect one time, and maybe you get one of these for each time you go on a mission with the guild. You can have up to one when you go. And then we get some magic items. And they list magic items both from this book and from the Dungeon Master's Guide that would be of importance to each guild, And then they list the ones from the book. Key runes are basically an item that lets you, every 3 days, create some sort of creature that can help you in combat, but also it allows you to access certain areas relevant to the guilds. There's one for each guild. There are guild signet rings, which have, spells associated with them. Illusionist bracers, which aren't actually illusion-based, but they were designed to be able to use two minor illusions at once. Really what they do is let you do use a bonus action to cast a cantrip whenever you cast a normal cantrip. So basically, if you cast a cantrip, you can do a second one as a bonus action. So that's kind of a cool item. Actually thinking I might try and work that into my current game even. And then they have some Misium Apparatuses, which are some of these, Magitech devices. This one lets you try and cast some extra spells that you don't know, but depending on your check, you might cast a random spell. Misium Armor, Mordor, Moonmark Paint, which is basically mood paint. Yeah, Moodmark. Just a couple pages. Few items. And then going on to Chapter 6, the final chapter, which has 2 parts. Friends and Foes. So first are creatures. And they give creatures for relevant to each guild. Both in this book, Monster Manual, as well as... Let's see... it says MTF for Wardenkine's Tome of Foes, or it might say VGM, Bolo's Guide to Monsters. So, ultimately, if you total up all of the lines throughout the book that are relevant to a book other than this or the core books, it's going to be less than a page. But on some of the charts like this, they do include information that if you have other books, it, basically gives you a little more to work with. But yeah, they go over different types of creatures for each guild. So if you're doing an encounter that involves them, what might you use? And then we have a bestiary. So we get some angels, a couple angels for the soldier, Boros, whatever, army, and then we get an angel tied to the Orzhov cathedrals, which are basically angels that have been corrupted by greed. Another Celestian Archon that is always riding a mount. an Arclight Phoenix, which is more like a normal kind of Phoenix than the one that was in, what was it, Mordenkainen's, except that it's like a Lightning Phoenix. But it's like an actual... It's more like an actual Phoenix, like it's a medium-sized elemental, so it's not super immense, like massive, like super elemental. So, it's quite fond of that. Conclave Dryad, just basically a type of Dryad related to that. We get some new demons. We get a Dark Elf Lich, another a lion kind of celestial, basically just getting some of the creatures that would be in the Magic game, you know. A few new giants. We get some horrors. Each horror has an ability that has you make a check, and at the end of an encounter, if you have failed that a number of times, you have to make a roll to possibly gain a madness that could be different extreme depending on how much failure you've had against the horror's abilities. Indentured spirits, which are very relevant with the syndicate, the Orzhov syndicate, as basically if you die owing the church money, you still owe them money, and your soul is captured. Weirds, which are weird kinds of elemental. Yeah. Like water and molten rock, or, you know, sort of electricity and smoke, or electricity in ice. Some weird kind of elementals. Then we get the Crosses, which are, with the Simic Combine, some of the creatures that they have made, which you get some interesting options of, and there are some examples of, but really it is 3 categories depending on the size of Krasis, and then each of them gets a major adaptation, which could be acidic skin, armored hide, flight, regeneration, and they get a minor adaptation, like aquatic, or climbing speed, or heightened awareness. So basically, they're like combinations of multiple animals. We get Kroll, which are like the sort of bug-like people. Another type of Kroll. You get a Cyclops in some sort of suit of weird super armor. Civic Hybrids, which, you know, were a race, but also here are some different hybrids as different, you know, monster entries. A giant bird, like a sky monstrosity, some thralls, a different type of Medusa that is relevant within the world, some different types of there's a couple different types of vampires, because those are relevant. We get a worm, which is basically a dragon, but they call it a monstrosity. And then we get the second section, which are NPCs by guild. So each guild, again, and also they note soldier to start because several guilds have those, but each guild, so Azorius here, has a little list of the different roles within the guild. And, you know, like, an arrestor would be a knight or veteran, so that's in the monster manual. An Azorius soldier would be a soldier, so that's here in this chapter. Hussar, which are the cavalry, would be a soldier mounted on a warhorse or griffin. And magical support would be a law mage or a precognitive mage. Both of those are listed in the next page. And then we also get Supreme Judge Asperia, which is the Guildmaster current to this guild. And they have a little detail. They give ideals, bonds, and flaws, and then they also have a couple little entrances for entries for the different kinds of other NPCs that are in this section. But then we actually get the Guildmaster for the guild. So these are high power sort of creatures here. So we have that, and then we get stat box for each of the other types of character. And then some of the guilds have little side box of, here is one of these like normal kind of folks. Here is a named one that is relevant. So you get that again. Boros has their Guildmaster. It's an angel, as well as a few of their, you know, specialized warriors. Dimmer has its Guildmaster, who is a shape changer, and I love that. They have like the image here, Lazov with a question mark. Maybe this is it. Mind Mage, Thought Spy. Golgari has its fungus-covered Guildmaster, undead creature, and a Shaman. Gruul gets its Cycloptic Guildmaster, and the Druid, or other people within their organization, is ruled by a dragon. And then they have the Blast Seeker are the people that actually test out all of the crazy inventions that may go wrong, and then Scorchbringer Guard to protect their facility. Orzhov has a series of 5 ghosts that run, like, the Ghost Council runs the, they combined are the Guildmasters, so it gives stats and then just a little block for, depending on which one it is, each of the 5 of them have one power that's different, but otherwise one stat block for each. And we move to Rakdos NPCs. We of course have the demon Rakdos himself, and then we get Blood Witch, Lampooner, and Performer, so different people to perform in their circus. We, missed. There's a detail on one of the other ones I missed that I just remembered about. The Golgari have a lair, which is basically a group of them can have a lair, and then Rakdos as well has a carnival, so they have a lair of their own, which is based on when a group of, I think, like 6 or more are performing. They get lair, regional effects and lair actions and such. So, and like the regional effects are like drawing people in, like psychologically, pulling people into the, go watch the show and such. So, yeah, there's that. Celestia NPCs. We get the Tristana, which is like a triple dryad. Like 3 dryads growing out of one tree stump or whatever. So like they're 3 minds, shared body, whatever, that leads. And then we have the Horncaller. And then we have Civic NPCs, which is Zagana, the Merfolk leader, and finally the Biomancer, which is going to be the mage that actually does the work of combining multiple creatures and such. And that is Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Of course, if you want to play in Ravnica, if you want to run a game, play a game in Ravnica, wonderful tool for it. And I'm not saying I never will. I can foresee a future where I might, once there are multiple, I'd say my game group I'm currently playing with is about 4 people, so probably at least 4 different settings. Once we have a few of these books, I might run a game that involves some actual planeswalking. I could foresee that. That would be cool. But no time soon. I'm not planning on jumping into running a Ravnica game anytime soon. So as I'm reading through the book, there are definitely things that I'm thinking about. How can I use this? The easy and immediate thought process is, of course, the races, many of which are great for many different settings. And then there's a couple subclasses, Order Domain and Circle of Spores. Those easily insert into other campaigns. So, wonderful. And then, of course, there's some treasure, which, some of the treasure is tied is well tied to the guilds themselves, but some of it are things that you can easily pull into other options. With friends and foes, the bestiary, a lot of the monsters, a couple new angels, some new giants, some new demons, etc. Many of those can easily just be pulled into another game. And with minor reskinning, a lot of the other NPCs, like if you need like a big bad boss kind of thing, you could use one of the Guildmasters, just not tied to a guild, change their personality, and just use their abilities, and you have a pre-made, boss there. So, any of those are things that can easily be pulled to your own game. But one of the things when trying to think about it, this game is based on these guilds. And like the setting is based on, the interplay between the different guilds and such. But that does not have to be the case. What if I just wanted to insert like some sort of group of mad scientists? I open up to Is It League here. Mad scientists that work with, turning arcane energy into like a source, like a material that can be kept like in batteries and generated, and then used for wild magic tech experiments. Then I can take some of the magic items that were more flavored for this setting, and some of those, the Mizzet items, all of a sudden work, and I can just take this guild, and just this guild, and I can insert it into my world, maybe change the name, a little bit of the, tweak to the flavor, but in general, it is a wonderful starting point if you want to have a guild, even if it is just one or two of them. You don't have to take the whole guild, the whole list of all the guilds. You can take just the one or the two. I need a police force in my game. I have to come up with that. Well, I could just open this up, go to the Zarya Senate, and it is a police force, law enforcement sort of, judicial system designed for a fantasy setting that includes a background for being part of it. And if you don't want to, and if you're not including them, you don't have to include the guild spell list and that kind of detail, that would make a background have extra power. You can just take the beginning part, and it's balanced with any of the other backgrounds. If you just take it down and stop after the feature. And so you can have that, you get, basic ideals and such for the guild, and you just basically skip over the details that are relating to how it plays with some of the other guilds. But a lot of the detail is just, here, if you have a player that is wanting to, be a member of a police force and advance in the ranks as they go, well, it's already built in. Maybe you don't like the names Official, Authority, Minister, and Arbiter, and maybe you choose to change the names, but in general, the system is there. The ability, you've gotten to a certain point, you can now, when they're giving you a mission, a task to go on, you have a job to do, you can, at a certain rank, as a Minister, you can request up to 3d4 soldiers in order to assist you on your task. Just being able to get help with it as part of advancing in the ranks is just built in. Additionally, in the, creating an adventure, you may not use all the details, but there are 10 location maps. And maybe I don't utilize the guilds themselves, but there is a map here for, under the Boros Legion, that is for a Legion garrison. It has, various, meeting and lodging areas, a mess hall, and it has offices for commanders. Ultimately, this one has posts where, Griffin or Pegasus riders could, come with, put their mounts, stay, that are only accessible by those with flying mounts to help keep it protected. Or there is the arrestor station, which is courtrooms, jails, and sort of, officer like chambers to hold evidence, and a morgue for dead bodies all included in there. They're things that, they're designed to go, that is designed as part of the Zarya Senate. But there are lots of things like that that can be pulled out if you're just doing your own game, and that don't have to be directly tied. So, also the artwork in the book is beautiful. Some of the art I know, I recognize as, hey, that's from such and such card. And there's definitely some of that, but a lot of it, I'm fairly positive, is like new art. Because a lot of it I do not recognize. And now, of course, there would be plenty of cards from the set that I wouldn't necessarily recognize, so maybe it's just that. But I'm pretty sure a lot of the art is new to the book. And it is a beautiful book to look through. But yeah, I will link down below if you want to pick this up online, or of course you can check out your friendly local gaming store. Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. It's a very cool book, and personally, I am excited to see the combination of Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. I've been hoping for that for a very long time, and like I said, once we get a few of them, I might actually run a game in a setting that I didn't come up with myself. Maybe. But yeah, so yeah, I'll link below if you want to check it out. Let me know what you think if you picked it up or whatnot. And thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.